Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Detroit, Michigan, it's time for Detroit Business Radio. Now, here's your host.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of Detroit Business Radio, and this is going to be a good one. Today we have with us Tom Bartholomew, and he is with Bartholomew Media Group. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, thanks, Lee. Glad to be here this morning.
Well, before we get too far into things, tell us about your work, who you're serving, and what you're up to.
Well, yeah, so I am in the digital marketing space, and I work with contractors, home builders, remodelers, plumbers, people in the service trades. And I help them with their website, their search engine optimization, and social media management.
So how'd you get into this line of work?
Well, that started back in 1999 when I was working with my dad. We had a construction business, remodeling, and I built a website for us, just kind of learned some HTML, saw that would be a new advertising branch back in 99, and kind of have been building websites and doing marketing ever since.
So now, do you find that by specializing in this type of industry and these kind of local businesses, that gives you an edge maybe of some of the other folks that are out there doing a similar kind of work? Yeah,
absolutely. I made sure that when I started my business, I really wanted to make sure I had a niche. And it was just obvious that I worked with contractors because I was a licensed builder here in Michigan for 20 years.
And then what kind of, what challenges does the local kind of builder contractor have that maybe the lay person doesn't realize?
I think that a lot of times what I hear from all the contractors, they have a hard time generating enough leads. That there's certain times of the year that they get a lot, and then other times where they don't get any leads. And one thing that I help them do is even listeners can do is claim and optimize their Google My Business listing. It's really easy to do. They can just search for their business, and over to the right-hand side of a Google search, if their business is listed, it'll have their name there, and it'll say claim this business right there on the right-hand side. So they should do that, make sure they have all that filled out and optimize that listing just as much as they can with photos and their name and business hours. And that way that will show up in the Google 3-pack in a Google search when somebody's doing a contractor near me listing, then they'll be able to show up in those listings.
Now, is there anything you could be doing so that you can consistently show up with more and more phrases or words that are related to the exact work you do?
Yeah, and that's a lot to do with, a couple different ways that you can do that. One is your on-page website optimization. I really recommend content creation or blogging for my, the builders that I work with. So that way they can really target those keywords into a blog post, right? So you do a little keyword research, find out what you want to write about, and then you can put a blog post on, and that will help you show up in search engines for those keyword phrases.
Now, there's so much stuff you see on TV. They run ads all the time of these kind of do-it-yourself. Oh, it's not hard to make a website. You just kind of buy this thing, and then it's just easy. Is that really the case? Is it that simple just for anybody to just kind of do an off-the-shelf website that'll get people coming to their business?
Lee, I get that question a lot, and it's a yes and a no answer, because yes, it is that simple. You can go to any of those, page builders that advertise, you can do it for free, and you can build yourself a web page. But a lot of time what I see that happens, and where I end up fixing or rebuilding somebody's website, is they don't get the right on-page search engine optimization that we were just talking about, and they don't fill in their meta descriptions, which is what helps you kind of control what your search engines show. So you have a meta title and a meta description. And a lot of times those aren't even filled in, or they're not filled in correctly. So they don't really teach you the nuts and bolts. They just give you a simple way to maybe put a brochure style website up.
And that's probably one of the misconceptions, that a person thinks a website is just kind of like a digital brochure. And there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, absolutely. when I build a website for someone, we start with a customer profile. So that way we know who they're going to target and what type of keywords we're going to put. And then I make sure that it's interactive. So it has things that, maybe moves, or, a lot of times I'll put a chat bot onto the website. So that way when a potential customer stops on your website, they can actually contact you and interact with them in real time. So it's, you can make it a lot more interactive and appealing for people to reach out and get a hold of you.
Now, since you've been doing this, do you have any success stories you can share? Maybe, I wouldn't name names, but maybe explain kind of the problem this client had and then how you were able to fix it and what the result was down the road after they started working with you for a while? Yeah,
absolutely. So I have one in particular. It was one of my first clients that when I started back in March, when I broke out on my own, and I ended up they do construction. They kind of do remodeling just like I did. So it was real easy to connect. And they just had a Facebook page, a house profile, and a website that they built themselves. But they weren't getting the traffic. They weren't getting the business and leads that they really wanted out of that. They were really feeling, they tried Facebook ads and just things weren't working. So we talked about it. We figured out who their customer profile is. We put a marketing plan in place. And after we were able to build their website and, rebrand their company across the different social media channels they were on, they really started seeing a lot more people take interest, and they started getting people connecting with them on a chat bot that, like I was just talking about. People would come on there and reach out to them, and they were able to talk to that person right away, set appointments to get out and give them leads. And they noticed a 138% increase just in their website traffic just now since March.
Wow. So by doing some of these things right, it can make a dramatic difference in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. It can really, especially with contractors, they run into slow times. In fact, a lot of times right now is coming into a lot of contractors' slow season because it's winter, and, a lot of people don't always want to generate, they don't want to get their projects done in the winter or for whatever reason. But, if you do the right things with social media, you get onto Facebook, you join some local Facebook groups that, where the people, your customers, are hanging out, and you interact in those groups, just some simple things like that. Like we already talked about, the search engine optimization on your website can really help you stay busy all year long as a contractor.
So now if somebody is kind of going to take the plunge and start working with you, what does that first conversation look like? What is it? What are some of the questions you're asking them? And is there homework they have to do to be prepared in order to have you help them kind of be more successful?
Yes, absolutely. And the more input I get from the customer, the better their results are going to be. I tell them that right away. So that's the first thing I tell them. After we kind of get the niceties out of the way, introductions, I tell them, I let them know that the more information you give me, the more photos, the more videos, the more information you give me, the better our results. And we start off first with a customer profile worksheet, a buyer's persona, because you have to figure out who your customer is before you can even find out where they are or where to put your marketing budget towards.
Now, do they even know that? Like, how do they, they might have a picture in their head, but it may not be accurate if they kind of drill down and actually look at their customers in their checkbook,
Yes, you're right. In fact, a lot of people don't even realize they should be targeting a customer or even have a customer profile. A lot of times I hear, well, my customer profile is anybody that owns a house. Well, that's not necessarily the case. So I actually have a customer profile worksheet, a buyer's persona worksheet with some examples, and they can either fill it out on their own, with their staff or, their team, or I can even walk through it and kind of go through it with them, whatever they prefer. I try to help out as much or as little as the customer feels necessary.
Now, have you ever had the case where you're kind of coaching up maybe a client or potential client, and you start asking them these questions, and they're like, well, I'm positive. Like you said, my ideal client is somebody who owns a house. And then you start kind of getting layers and layers deeper, and then they realize, well, you know what? Maybe it's someone that's about to buy a house. Like it's totally different than in their head, it was one thing, but in reality, it was like an eye-opening experience for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially once they fill out that worksheet, the customer profile worksheet that I have, it really asks a lot of questions about even, what your customers' interests are, if they have kids, where they live. So it really goes in depth, into, what do they do? What are their hobbies? So once you can figure out all of that stuff, that really puts it into perspective, with you going back in your database of who your past customer was. And that's where you can get a lot of that information from. A lot of times it's right there. They have the information. They just don't really know how to dissect it.
Now, when you're working with them and you develop this persona, does a light bulb go off in their heads of, you know what, if I don't get this right, everything else is going to fall apart? Because if I don't know who my right customer is, then I don't know where to look for them. And then if I don't know where to look for them, then I might have been wasting a lot of money looking in the wrong place for them.
Lee, whether or not the light bulb goes on, I make sure that I emphasize that point enough times that I think I maybe flip the switch for their light bulb, because I won't start a marketing campaign without having that customer profile worksheet done and really defining who that person is. So that is a definite must in the beginning when working with me.
Now, do you find that most of the times your clients have some sort of web presence, but it's just ineffective and then you're kind of tweaking it? Or do you have clients that haven't even gone on the web yet?
Well, I kind of have a little bit of both. There's three different types of sites. There's a site that you built yourself, a DIY, a site that somebody that does web design, like your nephew built, and then one that without a website, like you said. So those are kind of the three areas. The people that built their own. Those are the clients that I work with a lot. That's kind of my ideal customer, right? The carpenter that built his own website, because he's the one that really needs that extra help. He built a website, he's not happy with it, and he's not getting the results. If your website's not optimized, it's not going to do you any good. I hear a lot of builders say, websites are not even worth it. And we know that's just not true in today's day and time.
Right. I mean, I'm sure they'd be shocked to know how many people are searching for a contractor near me, just those search results. And they'd like to have one or two more of those folks each time.
Yeah. And, that could be just as simple, Lee, as, like I said at the beginning, claiming their Google My Business page. And they wouldn't even need me to do that. Your listeners of any business that wants to get local traffic, local business, you need to claim your Google My Business page.
Now, before we wrap, is there any kind of advice you can give the folks that are maybe experimenting on Facebook with trying to get leads through Facebook? Is Facebook a good investment for most folks, or is it just too complicated?
No, I think it's a great investment. There still is leads to be had on Facebook, and even organically without having to pay for leads. Without having to pay for their advertising. What I recommend is that once you get that customer profile we were talking about, Lee, is to find local Facebook groups where that customer would be hanging out in. And then you want to join those groups. And then when you put a post out, so you want to interact in those groups, of course, you want to, when people comment, you don't want to just self-promote all the time. It wants to be helpful, when somebody asks a question, if it's related to contracting or not, you want to interact with them. But the thing that really will help with their engagement is when they make a post on their Facebook business page, if they share it within the first 10 minutes to all of their groups. So you want to share it to your groups within the first 10 minutes. And what happens is that'll tell Facebook that your post is very popular because it got so much engagement, and that'll expand the reach. Not only share it with that group that you just shared it with, but also Facebook will start showing it to more of your feed because it had more engagement.
And that's something folks may not realize, that when you have a feed, it doesn't matter if you have, 100 people in your feed or if you have 1,000 or 10,000. Every message doesn't go to all of them.
That is correct. In fact, I read something that you might get 4% of your list if you're lucky on just an organic post. And that's why I recommend this to people. This strategy is you want to join applicable Facebook groups. And then and Facebook doesn't know that it's you sharing your post. You want to make a post on your business page and then you share it to those groups. So now all of a sudden, instead of just an organic post with no shares, you have a post with, 1, 2, 3, 10 shares if you belong to 10 groups, and Facebook sees that as engagement.
Right. So, and that's why you pay an expert for this, right? Because this is all you're thinking about 24/7, and you're there to help them be more successful so they can focus on what they're good at, which is, doing the work in the contracting business.
Yeah, it's just like a contractor. They want people to hire them versus do it yourself, right? They don't want somebody to build their own deck. They want, a deck builder wants you to hire them to build your deck because they're going to do it faster, better. The finished product is going to be better, more stable, and go to all the codes, right? Same thing with doing a website or even, digital marketing. An agency is going to be able to do it faster, better. They understand it. Like you said, that's what I'm thinking about it day in and day out, is how to help builders generate more leads.
Now, if somebody wanted to learn more, have a more substantive conversation with you or somebody on your team, what's the website?
Website is BartholomewMediaGroup.com.
And then I'm sure they can find you on Facebook and other social media platforms as well, right?
Yeah, Bartholomew Media Group on all the channels, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, all Bartholomew Media Group.
Good stuff. Well, Tom, congratulations on all the success, and you're doing important work, and we appreciate you.
Hey, thanks, Lee, for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
All right, this is Lee Cantor. We will see you all next time on Detroit Business Radio.